here's their career head-to-head. Lamar's been rolling, and as Joe mentioned, it's usually because they get ahead and run the ball. So, Brew, are your Baltimore Ravens on upset alert?
Look, I respect my hometown team.
Which
The Bengals.
The Bengals, not the Saints.
I got a lot I can claim. It's just my life, all right? It's my life story.
Yeah.
In this case, the Bengals in this conversation. All right? I respect them. I think they're better than their 1-3 record. If they were to win, it wouldn't shock me, nor would it take me off the Ravens, thinking they can get to the Super Bowl.
So then they're on upset alert.
However, I don't think so. I think Baltimore is going to roll. I think they're going to win by 2 touchdowns.
Woo!
Like, they have the Bengals record. And you said it last segment, Nick. There are teams that they're just a tough matchup.
Burrow
and Lamar, well, hold on.
Sorry.
Lamar's 4-1, as you just showed, against Burrow. Lamar's 8-1 against the Bengals, period. And the last time when the Bengals beat Baltimore, the last time, 2022, it was the playoffs. They needed a 98-yard fumble return, all right, or Baltimore was about to score and win that playoff game with Tyler Huntley at quarterback. Tyler Huntley. All right, I know he made a Pro Bowl somehow, but Tyler Huntley at quarterback. That's how tough of a matchup they are. And you look at this graphic, it's just a bad matchup for the Bengals. They don't stop the run. Baltimore's best in the run. They give up a lot of points. Baltimore scores a lot of points.
That part's all
the
true.
Bengals are terrible in time of possession. Baltimore is one of the best in the league.
There you go.
And so Burrow's going to have to score every possession because he's not going to have many, I don't think, because Baltimore is going to dominate by running the ball, and he's going to have
By
to
the
score
way,
every
he
time.
did that against the other team from that area and lost.
Yeah.
Like,
So,
it
like he said, he's got to
speaks to
be
your
perfect,
point.
and they got to get a stop or two that they're not expecting to get.
Yeah, it's hard to get excited about the Bengals because they did beat Carolina, but Carolina had a chance to tie it with 4 minutes left in the game, so it wasn't like a lopsided victory. But when you look at Baltimore, they're only 1 game ahead of Cincinnati, so it's not like it's just crazy. And I understand the games were closer than what Cincinnati's had. I think the real edge that Cincinnati has going into this game is the big 3 are healthy, right? T. Higgins isn't on the injury report. Jamar Chase isn't on the injury report. Joe Burrow. Everybody's healthy, and this is really the first time that that's happened throughout the course of the season. So their ability to throw the ball, I think, is going to be so much better than what we've seen. And we saw Jamar Chase come alive, and the Ravens have struggled. They're 29th in pass defense. So you have a real ability here for the strengths of Cincinnati to take advantage of the weaknesses of Baltimore, and this could shift the other direction. Let's say Cincinnati gets ahead early, and Baltimore decides, oh, now we got to throw the ball 50 times and go to that formula that never. Well, depends how the game unfolds.
That's what they tend to do.
If Cincinnati goes up on top, they haven't, and this is common with a lot of offensive coordinators, is if you get down by a couple of scores, you immediately think, I've got to throw the ball to get back in this game, as opposed to saying, okay, if we just go down and get 1 score, this is dramatically different.
But we see that all the time.
It's what happened against the Chiefs.
It's what happened against the Chiefs in the playoffs, and then they didn't learn their lesson. All happened in week 1. So let me
They shouldn't do that.
Oh, okay, but that's
I know, but they have, unfortunately.
And it's not just them. It's a lot of teams. A lot of teams.
It's a lot of teams.
All right, so a couple things here. One is, Dust, the graphic that I said I didn't know if I was going to use, but I guess I will. Burrow's in his career against Baltimore. Now, it's not against Lamar, but just Lamar doesn't play defense. Burrow in his career against Baltimore has played well. The team's 4-4. You guys mentioned the.
So he's 3-0 against whoever, Huntley or whoever.
I got it, but I don't care about the wins. I'm talking about how he has done against Baltimore's defense. That's the point I'm trying to make there, which is Burrow has not struggled individually against Baltimore. He has played well individually against Baltimore.
It's always different, though, when you have a different quarterback, especially if it's like a backup quarterback, because there's going to be more 3-and-outs, better field position, a more tired defense. Like there's a lot other factors at play that you can't just look at these, numbers. I'm not saying that they're bad numbers or they're not worth considering, but again, it's got the major potential to be misleading.
You're right. The Bengals defense has gotten crushed by Lamar when they've been out there.
But don't you think the offense impacts that field position, time of possession?
Yes, to a degree. But I
don't
also
watch these clips
I think that it is worth noting that Burrow's played the Ravens 8 times in his career. If you're a wins guy, he's won half of them. If you're a stats guy, the numbers are good. But I also think Coach's point is correct, that these two teams' resumes are not the same, but more similar than it seems like that side of the table discusses it as. They both have one awful loss to a bad team. They both lost to Kansas City, right? That happened.
Sure.
They both played an NFC East team and the defense, and one time, and the Ravens beat the Cowboys 28-25. The Bengals lost to the Washington 38-33. That's their resumes, right?
But but I think that's like Baltimore has two. If you count Dallas as a blowout, because obviously they were.
I don't
stomping.
count a 3-point win as a blowout.
Yeah, but they smacked them around for 3/4 of the game.
But it's also a little disconcerting because
Yeah.
they blew the lead
They
against
let them
the
back
Raiders,
in it. But the
and
next
almost
week they
blew the
didn't
lead
let it.
against
No,
they didn't blow a fourth quarter.
right. The
so I'm
biggest
just saying they've
difference-
had two impressive performances.
Correct.
Has Cincinnati had any?
No.
Okay.
And so the biggest difference I would say is that I think the Ravens have had one awesome performance and Cincinnati's had 0. I don't think you think the Cowboys game was an awesome performance.
And don't underestimate the fact that all these guys are healthy, all these guys are practicing.
Well,
together.
that's what I give
But
you.
I
like,
wanna
the
ask-
pass defense.
There's some firepower there.
I want to ask Wild something, because this is the reason this game is so big for a number of nationally. It's because it's Ravens Bengals, 2 potential Super Bowl contenders. The reason it's so big for this show is because there is a real disagreement about which team has the better quarterback. There's a real disagreement about how we judge these guys. So this is what this season, Joe Burrow and Lamar, we can show you their numbers. I would argue they're as close to identical as you can get. Joe's been, and I did total yards to be fair to what Lamar does, and he hasn't beat there. The teams are scoring almost the exact same amount, whatever it is. But what about just the last 4 years? 4 years, all of them. So this is where I think Brew agrees with me, but Wilds thinks we're wildly unfair to Lamar. I don't know. In the last 4 years, Lamar has 1 MVP, Joe has 1 Super Bowl appearance. I would call those accolade stuff, close to a wash. The touchdowns are massively more for Joe.
32 more touchdowns.
I don't think, it's 29 more, but I got your back, Coach. And the turnovers are one different. The passer rating's higher. So you get like upset and very defensive of Lamar when we talk about Joe Burrow, at the very least being of his caliber. I don't understand how you can.
No, I think he's of his caliber.
No, you don't. You said you.
I say he's off the pedestal. I say he's off the medal stand and maybe onto the Mount Rushmore.
Yeah, that Lamar is clearly a grade higher than him. What's the evidence of that?
The reigning MVP is better than the guy who played half a year last year. So I would start with that. And for say just more recently,
this year.
For some reason we are taking the Dallas win where Lamar's offense ran for 274 yards and putting that just like on the same plane with barely beating Carolina.
No, that's not. No,
they barely beat.
No,
like they both have they barely beat Carolina and lost every other game. That's how I'm looking at the Bengals season.
I'm putting it on the same plane as the Bengals-Washington game, where Joe Burrow's team scored every time they had the ball and scored 33 points, and they lost because of their defense. That's what I'm putting it on. I'm putting those two things on the same plane.
Here's what
the Cowboys win and the Washington loss for Cincinnati. To me, Joe, as far as what Joe did.
For Dallas, Lamar's sitting on the sidelines as they field an onside kick and go.
Exactly right. Agreed. They both played awesome in those games. And Lamar was able to survive the fact that his defense almost gave it up. And Joe wasn't able to survive that his defense did give it up.
The Cowboys and the Commanders are the same team.
No, right now the Commanders are better. Demonstrably.
No, they're not better. The Commanders are better than Baltimore right now?
No.
The Cowboys.
The Cowboys
better than the Cowboys is what we're saying.
I don't know.
But don't you think this is what it is? If you showed the 4 years of the stats, you could say in the moment, as we are right now, Joe Burrow has been the better quarterback. But historically, years from now, we'll look back. If they ended their careers right now, we would say Lamar had the better career.
Yeah, of course.
Well,
without question.
If this game comes down to a passing game, if Baltimore is not able to play in the style that best suits them, then I think that's a real problem because we've seen it over and over again when they get out of that pattern, that's where they're most vulnerable.
Yeah, listen, this is two completely different conversations now, right? It was first our Ravens on upset alert, and then it was a conversation between Lamar Jackson versus Joe Burrow. Um, Lamar Jackson will always be a brutally difficult quarterback to compare to other quarterbacks because he's such a unique talent and all the things that he does. Because that's why even when you just look at those stats, it could be, it's a little bit misleading. Even some of the passing touchdowns versus just total touchdowns and stuff and turnovers. Like, yes, if you're talking about strictly passing quarterback, Joe Burrow is obviously better than Lamar Jackson, but Lamar Jackson can do more than Joe Burrow. And since Lamar Jackson can do more than Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson is technically less dependent on some of the pieces around him. Therefore, Joe Burrow is more dependent on the pieces around him, like wide receivers. Look no further than Patrick Mahomes' numbers going down without those wide receivers. So you're more at the mercy of that, and you need a better defense, of course, as well, because if you don't have a good defense and if you don't have weapons to throw, there's only so much that Joe Burrow can do. But you could make the argument that if both teams have their players, have their guys, have their weapons, and both teams have equal defenses, you'd go with Joe Burrow because what Joe Burrow can do from the quarterback position, passing the ball, will equate to more victories, higher levels of team success, as we've already have seen what he's been able to do, obviously reaching a Super Bowl. And like Mangini is saying, where if oftentimes a game doesn't go as planned, so if you are down by 2 scores, Joe Burrow will be in a better position to kind of overcome that. But you could also blame the coaching for Lamar Jackson, which I blamed plenty of times. You blame the coaching for the Ravens to be like, don't abandon the run just because you're down by 10 points or even 14 points for that matter. That's what makes you special. So it will always be a complicated conversation. And again, this is and it's going to be funny because it depends on who's primarily watching this video, Baltimore Ravens fans or Lamar Jackson fans, and you can just look at these stats and see how they're pretty equal. I mean, like very equal, but I'm pretty confident that majority of Baltimore Ravens fans will say Lamar Jackson is clearly better than Joe Burrow. And it's like, well, you're not using stats for that necessarily. And if you want to say MVPs are a voted award. So I honestly really don't use that for any case, quite frankly. Whether for or against, honestly, I really, really don't. Like, I don't point and say, I think Aaron Rodgers is an unbelievable quarterback, and I don't point to his MVP numbers of saying, see, that's why he's so great, because of those MVPs. If Patrick Mahomes never wins another MVP, I'm not going to say, see, he's not that good. He only has, 3 MVPs or whatever the number is, 2, whatever it was. So those awards, all honestly, I understand why people are happy to have them. I get it, but it doesn't equate to greatness for me. But obviously Lamar Jackson's great. Obviously Joe Burrow is great. I guess since they're playing each other and they're the same division, that's why this conversation has kind of landed on these two quarterbacks. And they did the same thing with Lamar Jackson versus Josh Allen, and it's like a whole back and forth. And what I learned last time is apparently if Lamar Jackson beats the Buffalo Bills, that automatically means that he's better than Josh Allen, and it's just not true. And here's the thing: if Joe Burrow now beats the Baltimore Ravens, does that mean that Joe Burrow is magically better than Lamar? Like, it's just not the way it works. But these are two great quarterbacks who lead their offense completely differently, right? And so it just becomes impossible to compare even these numbers, because again, you look at the completion percentage for Lamar Jackson and say, oh, he's 4% lower. And his passer rating is 6 points lower and all of that. But then you got to take in, and that's why I understand that he did total yards to be fair to what Joe Burrow, for what Joe Burrow and Lamar Jackson. But it's not completely fair necessarily, because running the football as much as Lamar Jackson does will take so much more out of you and holds can hold a greater weight for the team because you have to do more. Even though Lamar or Josh or Joe Burrow is throwing more, so the total yards are the same, right? But it's weighted differently. It's a lot easier for a quarterback to like come back, throw the ball 15 yards versus Lamar Jackson, who now has to tuck and run for 15 yards. So it's not it's again, the teams are asking him to do different things, but I'm not going to go as far and say that, because of that automatically makes Lamar better, right? Like I think this question, as long as they kind of keep going at the same rate that they're going and have the same levels of success, it'll always be an impossible question to answer. But the other question then is, who plays better situational football, right? Who can get the job done in those minutes that it really matters? When you are down by 3, you are down by 7, there is 3-4 minutes to go. Who would you rather have the ball, Joe Burrow or Lamar Jackson? So these conversations will always continue to be interesting, but from my viewpoint, very difficult to answer. It's a little bit easier to answer a question like a Lamar Jackson versus a Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson versus even Mahomes, or Mahomes versus Josh Allen, because I feel like those quarterbacks have more they're more similar than they're different, whereas Joe Burrow is truly really much more, out of all these quarterbacks right now, in terms of the ones that I've already named, who are pretty much always consistently the top 4 in the league. Joe Burrow is the more traditional quarterback, whereas Lamar, Mahomes, and Josh Allen are obviously more of the hybrid, but they're all different degrees, right? Lamar is the most athletic and uses his legs more than anything. Josh Allen uses his legs but also power and throws more. And then Patrick Mahomes is not as mobile or as great mobile as Lamar or Josh Allen for that matter, but he's a better quarter, but he can pass better, right? And that's why it's like, what combination of these skill sets make you the best, right? It's like if you're playing a video game and you have to, move the dials of the attributes of saying, okay, I could throw really accurate, but then if I go all the way up on accuracy, I have to reduce my speed, and if I bring up my speed, I have to reduce my accuracy. And it's like, what dials do you have to pull to make a better quarterback? And it's just, it will always be difficult, right? It will always be difficult to figure out. And I do think, though, out of at least the Ravens versus the Bengals, it's not hard to say that the Ravens have had significantly better defenses than the Cincinnati Bengals, but the Cincinnati Bengals have significantly better offensive weapons than the Ravens. So it's just, it just becomes really, really difficult. But I'm really excited for this game. I wish this was more of a primetime game rather than just a Sunday game at 1. But either way, should be a lot of fun, should be really interesting. I'm trying to think if there will be any really strong takeaways from this game, and I'm kind of conflicted more because I don't really know who the Bengals are, right? If Lamar Jackson and the Ravens just roll the Bengals, I'm like, okay, but like, are the Bengals actually good? So does that really tell me anything about the Ravens, right? And it's like, and if the Ravens lose to the Bengals and they lose by 7 points, 10 points, 3 points, it's like, all right, well, that is still Joe Burrow and the Bengals. Are they better than we think, right? Like, I don't know who the Bengals are right now. I honestly really have no idea who the Bengals are right now. So it's like, no matter what the outcome of this game is, I'm not so sure. Because then it's like, okay, if Joe Burrow rolls the Ravens, and it's like, all right, well, are the Ravens really that good? I mean, they beat the Saints, who may not really be that good, and they beat the Cowboys, who I don't really think or not the Saints, they beat the Cowboys, who are not really that good, and they beat the Bills, who a lot of people think were overrated because they only beat a few bad teams, So it's just like, it's a mess right now. Honestly, it feels like there was slightly more clarity a week ago than there is right now, because now it's kind of like, I don't know what we're dealing with right now. So if I had a better idea of who the Bengals were this year, it would be different. So I don't even consider it an upset alert, quite frankly, whether the Bengals won or lose for that matter. So yeah, I'm excited for this game because it's although it's still going to be confusing what the takeaways are, it's still going to be fun, and it's still going to be some data points. But those are just my thoughts. I'd absolutely love to hear yours. What do you guys all think? 1, do you think the Ravens are on upset alert with the Cincinnati Bengals? And 2, dare I ask this question, who do you think is the better quarterback, Lamar Jackson or Joe Burrow? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single comment, so whether you agree with me or disagree with me, either way, let's get in some discussions, get in some fights, but ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We are building an amazing community here, and I'd absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all genuinely feel connected to, something that we're really excited to be part of. I think we're well on our way to doing it. And please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help with the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much, and see you next time.